The sun hung low in the sky over Arlerkor, casting a golden hue over the town as smoke curled lazily from the chimneys. It was a town on edge, its people torn by the news of war that had arrived only weeks ago. War drums echoed in the distance, signaling the slow march of an enemy from a neighboring town, Ibikon, a much stronger and ruthless rival. King Adeola, the ruler of Arlerkor, was powerless. His advisors offered no real solutions to save the town from destruction. Ade, a poor man living on the outskirts of the town, watched the growing panic among the people. Ade was known for his wisdom. Though he lived simply, his reputation had grown over the years for settling disputes among families and friends. He was the one people turned to when the weight of their troubles became too much to bear. But no one, not even the king, had considered him when it came to the threat of war. As the drums grew louder, people gathered in the town square, desperate for answers. King Adeola appeared on his balcony, looking down at the fearful masses. He raised his hand to quiet the crowd, but his voice was weak. "People of Arlerkor, we have done all we can to prepare for the inevitable. Ibikon will arrive at our gates within days. We must stand together, or we will fall." Murmurs of despair rippled through the crowd. The people didn't believe they could withstand such a powerful foe. In the midst of the chaos, Ade stood up from the shadows. His lean figure was draped in a simple cloth, his sandals worn from years of walking the dusty roads of the town. His eyes shone with determination. "I have a way," Ade called out, his voice strong but calm. "A way to save this town without bloodshed." The people turned to him, whispering amongst themselves. Could this poor man, who had no power, no soldiers, really have the answer? "Let him speak," someone from the crowd shouted. King Adeola frowned from his perch. He didn't trust Ade, but the people were hungry for hope. "Step forward, Ade," the king said coldly. "Tell us your plan." Ade walked confidently into the center of the town square, the crowd parting for him. He stood tall before the king, meeting his gaze with quiet defiance. "If we fight them on the battlefield, we will surely lose," Ade began. "But war isn't always won by strength. It can be won with strategy, with wisdom. I propose we send word to Ibikon. Offer them peace, but with a twist." The crowd listened intently as Ade explained his plan. Instead of fighting, they would offer Ibikon a tribute, a gesture of goodwill. But in that tribute, there would be a hidden message, a clever riddle, that would force Ibikon to reconsider attacking. Ade's knowledge of Ibikon's culture and history, as well as their superstitions, would be their weapon. King Adeola listened, his face hard to read. He didn't like the idea of relying on this poor man's wisdom, but with no other options, he reluctantly agreed. The next day, a delegation from Arlerkor, led by Ade, set out to meet with the leaders of Ibikon. The townsfolk watched with bated breath, hoping that Ade's plan would work. They arrived at the enemy camp just before dusk. The Ibikon warriors, fierce and imposing, eyed them warily. Ade stepped forward, calm and unshaken by their intimidating presence. "I come with a message from the people of Arlerkor," Ade announced, bowing respectfully before the Ibikon leader, Arlerkor. "We seek peace, not war." Arlerkor, a towering figure adorned in battle scars, narrowed his eyes. "Why should we accept peace when we have the strength to take your town by force?" Ade smiled softly. "Strength is not always the way. In Arlerkor, we understand that wisdom often leads to better outcomes than violence. We offer you this tribute, and within it, a challenge. Solve this riddle, and you will know that there is more to gain from peace than war." Ade presented a wooden box to Arlerkor, who opened it cautiously. Inside was a simple stone, engraved with ancient symbols. The Ibukon leader studied it, his expression unreadable. "This is the challenge?" Arlerkor asked, unimpressed. Ode nodded. "Decipher its meaning, and you will see the wisdom of peace." Arlerkor's advisors gathered around him, whispering in his ear. They knew the symbols, they were part of their own history, symbols of unity and prosperity. To wage war against a town that offered such knowledge would be seen as a sign of arrogance in their culture, a risk they couldn't afford to take. After a long silence, Arlerkor finally spoke. "We will consider your offer of peace." Ade and his delegation returned to Arlerkor, where the people waited anxiously. When they saw Ade returning unharmed, with no sign of battle on the horizon, they erupted in cheers. Arlerkor had been saved, not by swords, but by the wisdom of one man. From that day on, Ade's name spread like wildfire. He became the hero of Arlerkor, the man who had saved the town from certain destruction. Families who had once ignored him now sought his counsel for even the smallest disputes. Friends who had quarreled for years came to him, and with a few wise words, Ade settled their differences. But despite his newfound popularity, Ade remained humble. He continued to live in his small, worn-down hut on the outskirts of town. His clothes remained simple, his life unchanged. He sought no reward for his deeds, only the peace and happiness of the people. One afternoon, a woman named Temi came to Ade's hut. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her voice trembling. "Ade, I beg you," she said, her hands shaking. "My husband and I are at odds. He wants to leave me for another woman. What should I do?" Ade listened patiently, nodding as Temi poured out her heart. When she was finished, he spoke softly, his voice like the wind through the trees. "Love is like a flame, Temi," Ade said. "If you do not tend to it, it will fade. But if you feed it with care, it will burn brighter than ever. Go to your husband, speak with him not in anger but in love. Remind him of the bond you share, and if he is wise, he will return to you." Temi wiped her tears and left with renewed hope. As time went on, Ade's counsel continued to heal broken families and repair damaged friendships. His wisdom became the cornerstone of the town's harmony. But while the people loved him, there was one who did not, King Adeola. While Ade's reputation soared throughout Arlerkor, King Adeola's frustration grew. Seated on his ornate throne in the grand hall, he clenched his fist as he overheard villagers outside singing praises of Ade. Even though Ade had saved the town, the king couldn't shake the feeling that his power was being undermined. King Adeola, muttering, "He's just a poor man. How can these people revere him more than their king?" Queen Arewa, seated beside him, noticed his anger and sighed, leaning forward with a sly smile. "Queen Arewa, softly, oh my king, Ade's fame grows with every day. The people whispered that he's the true savior of Arlerkor. You must act before their admiration for him turns into a challenge to your rule." King Adeola's face darkened at the queen's words. Though Ade never sought power, his mere existence was now a threat to the king's authority. "King Adeola, but what can I do? He has the people's trust. If I act against him openly, it will stir rebellion." Queen Arewa smiled again, this time more maliciously. "Then you must act in the shadows, my king. Remove him quietly, and the people will mourn him, but they will move on. Without him, their attention will return to you." King Adeola leaned forward, intrigued by her suggestion. "King Adeola, yes, yes. We will rid ourselves of him, but not here, not where the people can see. It must be done quietly, far from the town." The queen nodded, her eyes glinting with malice. They devised a plan to eliminate Ade. They would hire assassins to capture him, take him far from Arlerkor, and execute him without a trace. Late one evening, after Ade had finished mediating another family dispute, he returned to his humble hut on the outskirts of town. The night was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. Inside, Ade prepared for bed, unaware of the danger approaching. Outside his door, 3 masked assassins crept silently. Hired by the king and queen, they had orders to kidnap Ade, kill him, and dispose of the body far away from the town. With swift, coordinated movements, they broke into Ade's hut. Ade, startled from his sleep, barely had time to react before the assassins grabbed him, binding his hands and gagging him. They dragged him out into the night, throwing him into a cart waiting at the edge of the forest. Hours passed as they traveled deep into the wilderness, far beyond the borders of Arlerkor. The moonlight cast eerie shadows over the trees as they reached a desolate clearing. One of the assassins pulled Ade from the cart and threw him to the ground. The leader of the group drew a dagger, raising it high over Ade's chest. Ade, gasping, What is my crime? Why must I die?" The assassin paused for a moment, looking down at Ade with disdain. "Your crime is being loved too much by the people. You were sent by King Adeola and Queen Arewa. They cannot bear to see you live." With that, the assassin drove the dagger into Ade's side. The other two stood by, watching as Ade collapsed in a pool of his own blood. Certain that their task was complete, they left him there, believing he would die before morning. Fate, however, had other plans for Ade. As the night wore on and the assassins disappeared into the distance, Ade, though gravely wounded, was not yet dead. He lay motionless, struggling to hold on to life. Hours later, just before dawn, a hunter named Ig from a neighboring town passed by. He had been out tracking game all night and stumbled upon the clearing where Ade lay bleeding. Ig, startled, "By the gods, what has happened here?" Ig rushed to Ade's side, checking his pulse. Though weak, Ade was still alive. Without hesitation, Ig lifted Ade onto his shoulders and carried him back to his own village, where he nursed Ade back to health over the following weeks. During that time, Ade, though weakened, told Ig the whole story of the assassination attempt and the king's betrayal. "Ade, horse, I was meant to die in that clearing. But by the grace of fate, you found me." Ig nodded solemnly. "Ig, you must stay here until you are fully healed. The people of Arlerkor will search for you, but if they believe you are dead, it may be safer for now." For the next 2 years, Ade remained hidden in Ig's village, recovering from his wounds and watching from afar as Arlerkor moved on without him. Meanwhile, in Arlerkor, the townspeople searched desperately for their beloved Ade. When they could not find him, they mourned his death, holding ceremonies in his honor. Back in Arlerkor, the absence of Ade was keenly felt by everyone in the community. Without his wisdom, disputes grew more frequent, and tension brewed in the town. Though King Adeola and Queen Arewa had succeeded in getting rid of him, the town no longer had the sense of peace it once enjoyed. The people mourned Ade, believing him dead, and they held a somber ceremony, honoring the wise man who had once saved their lives. Arlerkor has not been the same since Ade disappeared. He was the heart of this town. The king holds more festivals and parties now, but it feels hollow. There is a shadow over everything. Despite these sentiments, the king and queen celebrated their success privately. King Adeola became more arrogant, throwing extravagant parties and living in luxury, but he never regained the true respect of the people. The shadow of what he had done lingered over his reign. 2 years had passed since Ade's supposed death, and Queen Arewa's birthday was approaching. To celebrate, King Adeola organized an extravagant festival that would bring the entire town together. The king saw this as a chance to distract the people from their discontent and solidify his control over the town once more. The day of the party arrived, and the streets were filled with color and noise. Musicians played, dancers toured, and villagers gathered in the town square, eager to join the festivities. The king and queen sat on their high thrones, adorned in fine robes, overseeing the crowd with self-satisfaction. King Adeola, let the people see their king knows how to give them a good time. They will forget all about that poor man Ode. The party was in full swing, with feasting and laughter filling the air. But unknown to King Adeola, Ode had been watching from afar. Disguised in simple clothes and with his face partially covered, Ode mingled among the townspeople, observing the king's arrogance and the false joy of the occasion. This was the moment he had waited for, his chance to reveal the truth. As the day wore on, the time came for the traditional birthday blessing. According to custom, someone from the town was invited to step forward and offer a prayer or words of goodwill for the queen. King Adeola, brimming with pride, stood and addressed the crowd. "Now, let one of you step forward and offer your blessings for our beloved queen." There was a brief pause, and then, to the king's surprise, a figure in the crowd stepped forward. It was Ode, still in disguise, but his voice was clear and commanding. "I would like to offer my blessing." The townspeople murmured among themselves, curious about the stranger. The king, though suspicious, allowed him to speak. "Before I offer my blessing, I would like to tell a story. It is a story of a man who was once trusted and beloved by the people. He gave his wisdom freely and saved the town from ruin. But one day, the king and queen, in their jealousy, plotted to have him killed. They hired assassins to take him far from the town and leave him for dead." The crowd grew silent as Ade's words sank in. The king's face paled, and he shifted nervously on his throne. Ode, continuing, but fate spared him. Though wounded, he survived, and for 2 years he has lived, waiting for the day he could return and reveal the truth. Ode slowly removed the cloth covering his face, revealing himself to the astonished crowd. Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire. "It's Ode. He's alive. He's come back to us." King Adeola shot up from his throne, rage contorting his face. "Guards! See him!" But the guards hesitated, fear flashing in their eyes. They knew that to move against Ode now, in front of the entire town, would bring the wrath of the people upon them. The crowd began to murmur more loudly, some moving forward in support of Ode. How could the king do such a thing? Ode saved us. He deserves our loyalty, not this treachery. In a fit of rage, King Adeola could no longer contain himself. He pushed past the guards, charging toward Ode with all his fury. "King Adeola, I'll deal with him myself." But as he lunged toward Ode, something unexpected happened. The king's foot caught on the edge of the platform, and he stumbled, falling heavily to the ground. A gasp rose from the crowd as King Adeola lay still for a moment, then groaned in pain, unable to move. "He's fallen," said a villager. When the guards rushed to lift the king, they realized something was wrong. King Adeola was paralyzed from the waist down. The people, once silent, began to speak louder, the weight of what had just transpired hanging in the air. They saw it as a divine punishment for his treachery. "The gods have judged him," another villager said. Queen Arewa, panicked, rushed to her husband's side, but it was clear to everyone that his reign had come to an end. The people began to chant Ade's name, calling for justice. Ode should be our leader. He has the wisdom to guide us. With the king unable to rule, and the people no longer willing to support him, it was clear what had to be done. The council of elders, who had also attended the party, stood up, acknowledging the will of the people. "Ode, though humble and poor, has always been the wisest among us. It is time we let him lead." An elder said. Ade, though shocked by the turn of events, remained humble. He stepped forward, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. "I have never sought power or riches. All I have ever wanted is peace and prosperity for Arlerkor. If it is the will of the people, I will serve, but know this, I will rule with humility, as a servant to the people, not a king above them." The people cheered in agreement, and the council declared Ade the new leader of Arlerkor. As for King Adeola, he was dethroned and sent away in exile, his power stripped, and his reign reduced to a cautionary tale of greed and jealousy. Under Ade's leadership, Arlerkor flourished once more. The disputes that had once divided families and friends were settled peacefully, and the town regained the harmony it had lost. Ade remained a humble man, never seeking personal gain, always putting the needs of the people first. As for the former king and queen, they lived out their days in obscurity, their names fading from the town's memory, replaced by the story of Ade, the wise and humble leader who saved Arlerkor not once, but twice. May the story of Ade remind us that true power lies not in wealth or title, but in wisdom and humility. The villagers bowed their heads in agreement as the sun set over Arlerkor, marking the beginning of a new era of peace and prosperity.